Hey there, welcome to New Life. We're truly glad you're here today, and no matter your story, your questions, your doubts, or your struggles, there's a place for you here. Before we continue on with our gathering, here's a reminder about who we are. New Lifers are faith-filled, big-thinking, bet-the-farm risk-takers. We'll do anything short of sin to reach people who don't know Christ. You know, we lead the way with irrational generosity because we truly believe it's better to give than to receive. And we will laugh hard, loud, and often because nothing is more fun than serving God with people that you love. So we hope you're ready for a move of God today. Every man, woman, boy, and girl of every age and stage, get ready because God wants to do something big in your life. The best is yet to come because no matter what, Jesus offers hope. Welcome to New Life.
Well, good evening, church family. I am so glad that you're here. We're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to cover tonight. But a couple of things I want to let you know as we get started. I'm Trin. We all know each other. Everyone here is from our church network. And so those that you haven't met yet, I hope you'll get a chance to get to know tonight. But I'm Trin, and I'm here with Pastor Keeley. We're going to chat with her in just a minute. A few things I want to let you know. First of all, we intend this to be very informative, very helpful, but very informal. If you need to get up, Kyler has us well stocked with snacks and drinks in the lobby, so please feel free to get up if you need to. Restrooms, of course, are all the way to the right as you exit here. And then, of course, several of us have kids in the kids area back there. They've got it handled, but if they text you that they need any help or you feel the need to check on them, you are more than welcome to do that. And I know most of us are like, please, God, no. I've got 2 hours and 48 minutes left of this piece. So, but thank you for being here this evening. We have been putting on the New Life, it's gone through a few name changes, but the New Life Parents Conference for a number of years now. Every year it's a little bit different. Every year we do a little bit different material or a little bit different spin on what we're talking about. But the ultimate goal and the reason we came to this final name change of Healthy Parents Conference is because the goal is to create healthy parents and healthy families. So we never want to create the facade of doing well. That's not helpful. It's not helpful to look like we're doing really well or to convince one another that we're perfect parents. That doesn't serve our children. And that's our job as parents, is to serve our children. And so the idea is to create health in us and to give us the tools that we need to create a healthy home and a healthy family. There are people here tonight that have teenagers, people that have elementary school children, toddlers. We even have an expecting parent in the room. Tasha, we're so excited for you, and never too early to start. And we've been saying never too late. There are so many changes and tweaks and all different things that we can make, not to mention with every new phase comes different decisions that need to be made. Just about the time we have it figured out, don't they change it up on us a little bit? So this evening, we want you to be comfortable, we want you to have a good time, and we want to make sure that you get all the information you need. So we're going to dive right in. The format of this evening is 3 sessions, and so we will have some breaks in between. Like I said, if you need to get up before then, no problem, but we'll have a little stretch and drink and potty break a couple of times throughout the evening. And so this begins Healthy Parents 2022. Every year we try to bring a new theme, and the theme isn't meant to be a complete overview of how to parent, because that doesn't exist. You weren't made a parent by God to do anything exactly like anyone else. And so even the most requested thing that we have is Pastor Keeley going to be teaching? And several of you in the room asked me that before it began. Yes, Pastor Keeley's going to be teaching. I'm just your host this evening, but you're not even meant to parent exactly like Pastor Keeley, and she would never want you to, because you have different children than she does, in a different time, in a different place than she does, and you were created by God to parent those children. So we don't believe in one size fits all or across the board parenting. But our job is to seek wisdom from God and from what the Bible calls a multitude of counselors to find out exactly what God wants from us. And so the purpose this year is to bring a set of tried and true principles and tools as you seek God's wisdom in your parenting. So in addition, Mom, to being a certified biblical counselor, an ordained minister, and the mother of truly four fabulous people, one is me, the best one. Mom has also been, and some of you may not know this, a parent coach and counselor at the level of County Family Services. So she would teach classes and perform consultations that included the material that we're going to go over tonight. And this would happen when the court mandated that a parent whose children had been removed from the home, they needed education before their children could be returned to them. And so Mom's goal has always been family reunification and healthy families. And you were able to facilitate that quite a bit, weren't you?
Yes, I really enjoyed that. It was great to see the parents growing and the children really responding to that. It was really gratifying.
And so Mom has been focused on counseling individuals and families through New Life Counseling Center. Many of us have come to see her in that capacity. But despite all of that accreditation and all of the diplomas and all the certificates and everything, Mom doesn't like to speak in public. She can do it. She doesn't like it. And you may be familiar with the saying, you might need to write it down, if Mama ain't happy. There you go. That's the premise for this. No. So here's the format. I'm going to facilitate these teachings, and this year they're all going to be taken from Love and Logic, which some of you may be familiar with. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. And then Mom's going to jump in as needed, and I have several questions for her. And then there is going to be an opportunity at certain times throughout the evening for group questions. So if you have a specific question as we go through these teachings, write it down, and so that you're able to ask that. And then there will also be times of personal application. That's going to be what I think is the most valuable for all of us this evening, which means we'll go through the teaching, we'll go through the material that we're going through this evening, and then if you came with a spouse or you brought along a support person like your own parent, you'll have a chance to discuss the teaching. If you're a single parent, either because you're awesome and you're a single parent or because your spouse couldn't be here this evening, you'll have a chance to write things down. But the best part of that is Pastor Keeley's going to be walking around the room to answer questions as needed as well. So the booklet that you have in front of you is intended for you to take as many notes as you need. There's some printed materials that we'll go through in there as well, but the back of 10 pages or so is just blank. So take as many notes as you'd like, write down your questions, not just so that you have notes, but so that you walk away from here with some actual resolutions and things that you'd like to apply, even maybe when you pick them up at 9 o'clock. Now, we want to let you know something before we get started. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And I know that you know that, and I know that we would all tell each other that, but it's going to help you a lot. It's going to help me a lot if we can really internalize that and believe that. So any method of parenting, if you approach it believing that you have to do it all immediately and perfectly, it's going to frustrate you and it's going to frustrate your kids. And that's the opposite of what we want. So relax. The fact that you're here tonight means that you really, really love your children, and you really, really are willing to humble yourself and do whatever you can to be the best that you can be for them. And so one of the primary beliefs in parenting with Love and Logic is that parenting should be fun. How many of you hope that one day when your children are grown and please God out of your home, that you will be friends? How many of you like to be friends one day with we're really good friends. And so what you're doing right now is raising your friends. And you really can't be their friend right now, but you can look to the future and believe that you will be. And so making an effort to enjoy your time together is going to be worthwhile. So we're going to get into this first teaching here. These teachings are selections from the Love and Logic Institute. Some of you may be familiar, some of you aren't. It's no worries. It's an organization founded by Dr. Foster Klein and Jim Fay, and they've written a book called Parenting with Love and Logic. I'm going to put that on the screen, and you're welcome to come take a look at my book. You may even want to, as you go through the night and realize that you like the principles, just open up Amazon and real quick order a copy there. They're about $15. But we highly recommend you check it out. You're going to hear the basics today and some real life examples. There are 2 companion books. If you're any of these specific areas, there's one called, it's my favorite, Love and Logic Magic for Early Childhood. Practical parenting from birth to 6 years. So it's the same ideas, but specifically for parents of children birth to 6 years old, which is a lot different than other ages. And then for those of you with teenagers, they do have a specific parenting teens with love and logic, because again, that's a lot different than parenting younger kids. In addition to recommendations, though, you have a packet in front of you with a lot of worksheets. And so mark all over those, take all the notes that you want to, and hopefully you'll have a lot when the event is over. So go ahead and turn to that first handout. It says Love and Logic starts with a hug. Love and Logic starts with a hug, and it already sounds kind of funny. So Mom, as we're going into this, is there anything you want to add about Love and Logic?
I think it's very important to remember the love part. If we don't, it'll come out as sarcasm. We'll get into that later, but the things that we need to say, our one-liners that we'll learn about tonight, will come out sarcastic if we don't make sure and use the love part. And when we pour that love into our children, they're much more likely to behave.
Absolutely. And hopefully she's going to tell us how to do that. So this page has our definition of love and logic, and the idea is to put them together in what the teaching calls parenting with love and logic, which we're going to get to in just a second. Now, part of your personal application time in a moment is going to be a chance to read the entire handout. So as we're going through these, don't be like, oh God, she's still talking and I was supposed to have read this entire page. That's not, these are for you to review in just a moment. We're just going to point out a few things, kind of lay the groundwork. But we want to read you just a few sentences from this handout that define why we're bringing this specific teaching to you this evening, and they're going to be on the screen and they're in your workbook. And so Mom, would you read those selections for us, please?
Yes, love. It takes a great deal of love to find the positives in our kids when they act poorly. Hug them before we ask them about their homework. Set limits without anger, lectures, or threats, and hold them accountable for their poor decisions by providing them empathy first and consequences second. And the logic part is when we give this special kind of love, a wise type of logic grows in their minds. When I make poor decisions, it makes my life pretty sad. I wonder how my next decision will affect my life. When our children are under the protection of the umbrella of living in our home, it's great for us to have those times where they need to think for themselves and practice that and fail forward. Because if they never get that time to practice, if they're told everything to do and never get to make any poor decisions and learn from those are the ones that go to college and go crazy or wherever, and they are all of a sudden faced with making decisions that they've never been allowed to make before. And they can go hog wild, and it goes really crazy. So it's very good to let them have some decision-making skills, and then they can learn what works and what doesn't work, and what affects their lives and others as well.
Good. And there's the second handout there that's in front of you says, what is parenting with love and logic? And again, this is yours to keep. You can go over it. But I'm just going to read one short section that we felt like was pretty important there. It says, many ideas offered with the best of intentions center around making sure that kids are comfortable and feeling good about themselves in order to have a good self-concept. However, we have discovered that self-confidence is achieved through struggle and achievement, not through someone telling you that you are number one. This love and logic method causes the child to see their parent as the good guy and the child's poor decisions as a bad guy. When done on a regular basis, kids develop an internal voice that says, I wonder how much pain I'm going to cause for myself with the next decision. Kids who develop this internal voice are more capable of standing up to peer pressure. So, Mom, before we go any deeper into this, I want to ask you a question that I bet many people would like to hear the answer to. So is it ever too late to implement the ideas, and is it ever too early to implement the ideas? Are there age brackets on these teachings?
No, there's no age limits, and I didn't find out about this specific teaching until my youngest was in first grade and my oldest was in seventh grade. And I did some research for my job and found out a new way of doing some things. And I knew what I didn't want to do as a parent, looking at what my parents did, but I didn't know what to replace it with. And we can decide I'm not going to be like my parent, but we have to choose a behavior to replace that with. Otherwise, we're going to fall into the trap of doing exactly like our parents did. So if you had a great parent, good. That's a great habit to fall into. If you want to change some things, then you want to replace that behavior with something else. Also, never too early. Babies are taking in their world from day one. And even in the womb, we're finding out more and more that in the womb, babies already have chemical washes going over them, that they know whether they're wanted or not. All kinds of things that we're discovering daily in science. And so even in the womb, they know a lot. So the moment that they're born, they are taking in all their surroundings. It's never too early, it's never too late.
And that's really the love component that you're talking
Yes.
about, right? Is it's not just that we're getting them on a routine or disciplining them
No.
from the beginning, but that we're really injecting everything. Wow,
Yes,
that's big.
everything with love.
That's awesome. But we do also want them to behave.
Yes.
And so I'm gonna turn your attention to the next page. It's called the misbehavior cycle, and there's pictures on this one. That's my favorite. I love a good picture. So there should be a page in there called the misbehavior cycle. Now, here's what I want to point out just as we go through this whole thing is the illustration is immediately going to make you think of elementary age students, which some of you have, those like, second, third, fourth graders. But go ahead as we look at this cycle and insert your kids at whatever age they're at, because this cycle and all the material that we're going over, Pastor Keeley just said, applies to kids. So mine are young, mine are 1, 3, and 5, which even just in that span, there's a big difference between my 1-year-old and my 5-year-old. So kind of just be thinking about your individual children and how this works. So as you're looking at that cycle, the first part of the cycle at the top there is misbehavior. And of course, in the illustration, brother pulls sister's hair. Maybe that's an actual possibility in your house, or maybe it's baby throws food, or junior higher breaks screen time rules, or teenager uses foul language, or Brinley sits on Zaylee's head, so Zaylee bites Brinley's leg. You can't really figure out who was wrong. Any of that could be happening in any of our homes. And so Love and Logic teaches that misbehavior, which is doing something they shouldn't do, triggers a reaction in adults to show anger and frustration. And we've all been guilty of that because we are angry and frustrated. But that informs the next part of this cycle, which is the child's perception of authority figures. And we think that this is really interesting because there are a few statements there that are very different because kids are very different. Like if you have multiple children, you might look at that and go, one of my children would react a different way to this than the other one. So you probably know your kids pretty well. But regardless, that misbehavior triggers adults to show anger and frustration, and it leads to what Love and Logic calls negative self-concept. Negative self-concept. And because kids of any age are frustrated or hurt or hopeless or irritated or defeated, they continue the negative behavior, and it's a cycle. So again, think about your own family, and the idea is not like we've all come in here, we're all failing miserably, but we all know what it is to have kids that misbehave. And so just kind of put yourself into that cycle there. Obviously, we want this cycle to stop so that kids behave, but we also don't want our kids to grow up with a negative self-concept. You wouldn't be here if you didn't love your kids and want what's best for them. And so the idea here is, how do we build a positive self-concept in our kids? And that's the next page in your hand, titled Self-Concept Builders and Stealers. So take a look at this list, and again, let's envision our own kids at whatever age and stage we're at. Mom, would you review this list and kind of add any thoughts that you have for us?
On the builders, I just happened to notice the make the discipline look easy, and that's what we're going for. Never let your kids see you sweat. You don't ever want them to see you sweating over, what am I going to do next, biting your nails, oh no, I don't know. Always give yourself a way out. I'll think about this and I'll get back to you. And then I really like the avoid lectures and repeated warnings. So many children are so extremely smart.
Oh my gosh, didn't you just have so many words?
So many kids are so smart, and they will remember the promise that you made about McDonald's that's coming Saturday from Monday, and they're just 2. They remember. But we lecture and remind and don't touch that. They don't need to be reminded. They already know what the rules are. They're very, very smart. So I wanted to encourage you that anything more than 2 sentences is a lecture.
That hurts my feelings.
I know, I was just waiting for someone to go, whoa. Because that to me is something huge. Do we realize how much we lecture our children? A 10-minute oration, you've lost them at the second sentence. Don't go for it. Don't let them pull you in. You got this.
Okay, I'm making my notes
Yes.
up here. But can I ask you a question then?
Yes.
Because you said never let them see you sweat, which just sounds so cool.
Mm-hmm.
But we just covered at the beginning here that we're supposed to not be putting up like a fake front for each other.
Yes.
So why is it so important that our kids don't see us sweat? What is that? Why is that important?
Because the child needs to feel safe. And when the child knows that my parent is in control and they can control me, they can encourage me to behave and do the right thing, they feel safe. There's a boundary system. That makes them feel safe. When there's a big, green, smelly bully that they talk about in Taekwondo a lot, the child feels safe. My mom and dad can protect me. But if they can't control a 2-year-old's behavior, that little 2-year-old knows, I'm this tall and I can control that parent. So how are they going to protect me from somebody that's big? They can't do it. And they live in that fear. So let's go to some of the stealers. Notice the difference in the self-concept builders is the parents love their kids for who they are. So important. I remember my grandmother, one time Trinity did some little tiny infraction. She was just a toddler, and my grandmother said, "Bad girl." And I said, "Oh, Grandma, we don't say that anymore. She's not a bad girl for making a tiny mistake. She made a poor choice." Behavior is way different than the child. We need to separate those so that the child doesn't feel like they're bad or good based on their behavior. They're loved because they're a Stein, because they're a Smith, because they're a Carroll. They're loved because they're a part of your family and God gave them to you. That's why we love them, not because of what they do or don't do. So the self-concept stealers, they love their kids for what they do, and that is really, really sad. So the parent will give the child attention when they're behaving, and then I've heard of parents who don't speak to their children for days. And it's just mortifying and terrible for that child's self-concept. So that's what we want to stay away from. And in those Steelers, some of these things sound like they would be good, like give their children everything. Don't we want everything for our children? More than we got, in things and everything. But to have them work for it and accomplish something every once in a while at least makes them feel good. Don't you feel good when you get your paycheck or a pat on the back from work or that type of thing? Or you're an at-home mom and you're working so hard and you get that chocolate hug and kiss, I love you, mommy. Isn't everything worth it because you got that pat on the back? Yeah, so we need to do that for our children. And we don't want to be afraid to set limits. That again is that safety zone for those children.
I have so many questions. But Mom, we're kind of coming to the end of this first teaching, and you've kind of said, tongue-in-cheek, but I know it's true, that real parenting isn't working on the kids, but it's working on the parents.
Yes.
And I know that you teach Love and Logic a lot, but another great resource that you've recommended quite a bit is have a new kid by Friday. Don't have a kid by Friday. It's not medically recommended. Have a new kid by Friday by Dr. Kevin Lima. We're putting that up on the screen too, because you've recommended this resource a lot. And you've said the title kind of lures us in because it sounds like we can change our kids in a week. But the book is all about changing our own behavior, because the truth is that even though we have more influence over our children than we'll ever have over anyone else, we can only control ourselves.
It's true. And don't be fooled because it's by a doctor. He is funny and easy read, not wordy, not huge words that we wouldn't understand. And he just draws you in, and he uses everyday situations that we've all been through. So I just enjoy him so much. He's very funny.
That's a good one. And I really was not expecting when you had first recommended this book that it's a literal by Friday. It's a Monday through Friday plan of like, here's what you do on Monday, and here's what I can get behind that.
Yes. And it works.
It does.
Yes.
It does. And so the last thing that we'd like to give you to think about, or us to think about, is the next page over that says 3 types of parents. I say the last thing in this first session here. And we're just a few minutes away from the self-application time, which is where we get to really study the handouts and determine the types of parents we are and the types that we want to be, which is what the remaining teachings are about tonight. But Mom, would you describe these 3 types of parents for us?
Okay, so a helicopter parent is one that that's why they're called a helicopter parent. They're hovering over their child all the time, smoothing out the pathway so that the child never hits a bump in the road. They never want the child to ever have a consequence, a problem. If the teacher keeps them after school, gives them some sort of detention, something like that, the parent is calling the teacher, very upset. My child can't possibly have detention. The helicopter parent is the one that the child is in college, and I heard about this recently. This is a true story. The mother called the dean of students to tell him that it was her fault that the child was in a different state and she didn't get him called to wake him up for the class in the morning. And it was her fault. So that he shouldn't be docked points for his grade. Anybody sad for that? Do you think a college student should be able to set an alarm and get themselves up for school? I think so, yeah, absolutely. So a helicopter parent doesn't want our children to ever have a consequence in life. And of course, we all want our children to be protected. We don't like it. And that's where the empathy and love comes in Love and Logic. We're sad when they're sad. We're sad when they're disappointed, when they're hurt. But we know that we have that umbrella. Can you draw a simple umbrella? We know that they're doing that under the protection of our home now, where they have a soft landing and we can be empathetic and loving with them as they're going through the sadness of making a poor decision, and a soft place to land, and now they can make good decisions. And that is the child who's going to get up for college, no problem. Now, a drill sergeant parent. Very beautiful, perfect. I could not have drawn that well, so that's wonderful. Okay, a drill sergeant. Good job. So a drill sergeant parent tells the child what to do at every moment of the day they're under their thumb. And what the child hears, because the parent says constantly, do this, do that, clean up your room, do your homework, brush your hair, it's time for this, do that, do this. The child's concept becomes, I must be really stupid. I can't even figure out when it's time to eat. I can't learn from my own body when I'm hungry because my mom and dad tell me what to do all day, every day, and they never give me a chance to choose anything. And so they get this terrible concept that I'm stupid, I can't make decisions for myself. So those are the ones in college that also go crazy because they've never had a chance to make a decision in their lives. And they don't know how to do it. They've not had any practice or a soft place to land and fall or any empathy with making poor decisions because every decision was made for them. And then we have a consultant parent, and that's who we want to be. That person offers love and logic and helps the child make decisions. And I just used this when you guys went away on your anniversary. It was raining outside, and we took the kids to Chick-fil-A, Jad, Bryn, and Zay, and I was very tempted to say, get your jackets on. Nana even keeps jackets at her house for the kids. And I was very tempted because it's raining outside, and I said, nope, not gonna do it. I said, would you like to carry your jacket, or would you like to wear your jacket? And they all chose to carry it except for Zay, who got her jacket on and she wanted it zipped up. She was ready for the rain. She was totally ready. And then when we were getting them out of the back of the vehicle, it started raining a little harder. And I just shouted over to my husband across the car, because we're getting him out of the back. I'm on one side, he's on the other. And I said, boy, Papa, I am so glad I have my jacket on because it's really chilly out here. Oh, they got their jackets on so quick. Now, Bryn got hers on upside down, but she had it on. She did. And I didn't even worry about all the parents that were probably going to judge me inside Chick-fil-A for having her jacket wrong side out, because she made a good decision and put it on all by herself, and she felt good about her decision, and I didn't have her under my thumb. She got to make her own decision, and she felt so good about it. So that's the kind of parent that we want to be. And we won't always get there, but when we do, it feels good for us and it feels good for them.
So this isn't really then, as I'm kind of looking at these, this isn't really like a scale even where we want to be in the middle. These are just vastly different types of parents.
Very different.
And it probably comes a lot from how we were raised.
Completely. And usually it's because we don't want to be like our parents, or we do want to be like our parents. But usually the pendulum swings, and it's really sad. It's kind of like breastfeeding goes in and out, and bottle feeding goes in and out, and it goes from one pendulum to the other. So when you think about the pendulum swinging on a clock, it seems like if you have a permissive parent, you're like, I didn't feel loved in that, so I'm going to be very strict with my children. And they go completely the other way, or vice versa. What we need to do is go to the middle and find the balance. The balance is what's going to help keep our family together and happy and evolving and thriving.
So that is the conclusion of the first teaching about what love and logic is and why we're learning about it. And so we're about to head into the self-application time. And there's a couple of things that we'd like to challenge you to do during this time. The first one is to review the handouts and any of the notes that you took. If you're by yourself this evening, you might want to specifically write some things out so that you don't maybe forget, especially if you're hoping to share them with someone. And if you're in a couple, we'd like to challenge you to discuss this this together, because of course you're in this together, but writing things down will also be helpful because it's hard to remember our aha moments when they're screaming. And so we have a couple of questions for review, and they're going to be on the screen, but we'd like to look at those 3 types of parents and say, what type of parents am I, or what type of parents are we? And then what type of parent or parents did I have? And what type of parent or parents do I want to be, or do we want to be? And don't forget that we are both parents if you're at a couple this evening. So you might be different types. You might, I think that's pretty common, is to be 2 different types of parents. So discuss that. And Mom, when we were very, very little, the first Bible verse you ever had the 4 of us memorize was, be ye kind one to another. And we used to say, be ye kind one to another, because nobody knew what ye meant. But let's do that with our spouses this evening. And the mom has been just so kind to us. She's going to be willing to kind of come around. So if you have any specific questions for her, you're welcome. Please flag her down. We want this to be as informative and helpful for you as it can be this evening. We're also going to treat this as a little bit of a stretch break. So we're going to take a few minutes. If you need to get up, get something to drink, check on your kids, anything like that, please just make yourself comfortable. Go ahead and review the questions and review the teachings. Awesome. God bless you guys.